G'day everyone, Rachie from Book Piles. Welcome to my June reading wrap up. I'm filming two videos back to back, so I'm hoping I don't mix everything up. And I look like I'm all the jumbers are weird. Okay, right, June reading wrap up. I read 8 books in June, but I'm only going to tell you about 5, and I'm going to do my best to remember those 5. Because I have so many books in my head currently. I've actually taken, I didn't bring it, to writing down about the book as I read it, because I'm getting to the point now where I just can't remember everything. And I'm going to have a bit of that issue with the reading today. Talking about the books today is going to be a little bit, it was a good book kind of thing. And I'm going to try and remember to leave a pause for the photos to be inserted instead of those sorts of things. So, June. My actual TBR was to read The Catherine Parr, the last of the 6 Tudor Queens, Sophie Jordan's While the Duke Was Sleeping, which is the first book in a series, and I don't think I can figure that one out. Oh, it says view series, but I think I'll lose my page if I move the Kindle. What have we got? While the Duke, Notorious, When He Was Wicked, which is the Bridgerton number 6, maybe? 5, 6, must be 6. And The Longest Holiday, which was the BookTube spin number that was called To Be Finished by the End of June, I think that's right. That was what I was meant to read. Of the what I was meant to read, I read 2. So, let's go. So, the first book in the month I read is While the Duke Was Sleeping by Sophie Jordan. Put in one way or the other. This is the first of a series, and for the life of me, I'm afraid to push the button and find out where it'll take me. It won't take me anywhere because I don't think I'm connected enough to the internet. I'll write it in on the screen, what the name of the series is. So yes, While the Duke Was Sleeping, it is very much a case of, if you know the movie While You Were Sleeping, I think that's called, is that right? Sandra Bullock, and I can't even remember the guys' names now. It's pretty much that story. So she, and I don't even remember their names. It was only a month ago. She has lusted after this duke that comes into the florist that she works in. She is just a shop girl who lives in a room, looks after her younger sister, who's a little bit scatterbrainy, I think, or highly strung, or just boisterous, and has to, make sure you stay in this room kind of thing when I'm at work. Don't get into any trouble. So this duke comes into the florist on a regular basis and places an order for flowers to be sent to various women around London, and she lusts after him. And one day she's outside the shop and she sees him get into an argument with another man, and he punches him and pushes him into the path of an oncoming carriage, and of course she saves him. She pulls him out of the way of the path of the carriage, and they go back to his place. He is unconscious. He's taken back to his place. Somehow, I don't actually even remember how it started. She says she was going to marry him, and someone's heard that and misinterpreted it, and now she's stuck with this whole being the Duke's fiance that nobody in his family knew about. It turns out that the bloke that struck him is his half brother. Yeah. And of course, what happens in the story is that the heroine and the half-brother are the two that end up falling in love. So what do I remember from this book? That is what I remember from this book. I don't even remember how steamy it is, but Sophie Jordan's a little bit more steamier than Julia Quinn. So if you know Julia Quinn, then it's a little notch up for Sophie Jordan. Did I enjoy it? Yes, I think I did. The Duke who is unconscious has a stepmother, and she is the subject of the second book. Yes. I don't want to talk too much about that. That's coming in another video. Let's just stop that there. Okay. I think I will quit while I'm ahead for that one. I remember the guts of what the story is, but I can't remember things like did it make me laugh out loud or anything like that now. So I like Sophie Jordan, so I didn't, it was fine for me. I enjoyed it, and I'm definitely interested in book 2, and probably will look at the rest of the series at some point. So I read that on my Kindle. Okay, this dog's breakfast of reading wrap up. The next book that I read is Notorious by Minerva Spencer, and this is the first of a series. Book 2, which is called Outrageous, became available this week. I'm filming on the 2nd of July, and I've entered no buy July, which means I'm not buying any books in July. So I won't be able to buy it till August. Notorious is Drusilla and Gabriel. What is the story of this? Right. Okay. The story of this is that Drusilla is a friend and companion to Gabriel's half-sister Eva. I believe that her name is Eva. I don't think I can find it quickly. And obviously she fancies him. But he doesn't really notice her. Then she gets into a situation with a not a very nice earl. I think he's an earl. And Gabriel rescues her, and they are sort of at the end of the rescue, and he's got his arms around her. People walk into the conservatory and they're in a compromised position, so they have to marry. Yes, that is all I remember of this book. I'm looking at the back to see if it will actually give me anything. Is she the one who... what are the other books that I have read? It's not those ones. And it's not that one. I am thinking... Okay, what I think the story with this, this is not great, is it? This Earl is a bit of a not a very nice man. This is not Gabriel, this is another person. And he enters into an agreement. Drusilla, or Drew, is involved in a sort of a charity-ish group type thing, and there is a guy in this group who has a bit of a flame for her, but she doesn't return the favor. And it turns out that the evil Earl and this guy are actually cousins, and they decide to cause a bit of a ruckus, get some revenge, and they look to try and kidnap her. So weaving in amongst all of this is the half-sister Eva, and she is doing a few things undercover, and it ends up with Gabriel rescuing Drew, and Eva, the book literally ends with a duh, duh, duh. Eva sort of says to Drew before she's kidnapped, if you don't hear from me, sort of thing, don't worry, I'll make contact with you, it's alright. And Drew's like, what's going on? Yeah, no, it'll be fine. So literally the last few sentences of the book are, Eva has kidnapped the evil Earl. So yes. I think if I remember rightly, it started out probably a bit slowly, and then when it got into sort of the kidnappy type stuff, it got a little bit more exciting. I do not remember the steamy side of it at all. It didn't sit in my head at all. So I don't know how steamy it was. But then when we got into sort of the kidnap and find Drew, and then the cliffhanger at the end, it got a lot more exciting, and I am definitely interested in reading the second book in the series. So Notorious by Minerva Spencer. It is a historical romance. Okay, book 3 and book 4 I'm going to kind of talk together, I think. So book 3 that I read is The Stopover, and book 4 is The Takeover. These are books 1 and 2 in the Miles High Club by T.L. Swan, I think that's right. And they are contemporary romances, they're not historicals. And I stumbled across this, it must have been somebody's video told me about the book, and I went and had a look, and I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. I read book 1 and I thought, oh, I like that, let's read book 2. So book 1 centres on the eldest brother Jameson, and a young lass that he meets on a plane, and I can't think what her name is off the top of my head. Jameson and, yep, no, I don't know. On the plane he just tells her his name is Jim, and they have a flirtatious flight together, but the flight is diverted to another city, and they have to spend a night in a hotel because of bad weather, basically. So obviously it gets a little bit steamy in their hotel room. She's on her way to New York for an interview, but she doesn't tell him anything about that it's basically, it's going to be a one night together, I'm never going to see you again, we don't need to swap any more details than that, sort of thing. And so the first part of the story ends after this night in the hotel. They go their separate ways. The plane goes off and they go their separate ways. Cut to a year later, and she has finally got the job that she went for the interview for, and you guessed it, dear reader, it is in the firm that Jameson is the CEO of. The Miles family have a media corporation that's massive. It's one of the top 2 in the country, and he's the CEO, and she joins the company. She gets a job there. She doesn't realise that it's anything to do with him, but she doesn't even know that his name is Jameson Miles. She just knows him as Jim. And she, on the first day, she's taken on an orientation around the offices, and of course they go and meet the higher up people, and she meets him, and it's like, oh, okay, it's you. And he's like, yeah, you, right. And then it just goes from there. And I enjoyed it. It's my second of the 2, but between The Takeover and the Stopover and The Takeover, I prefer The Takeover. But there was enough in The Stopover that made me want to keep reading the series. There are some laugh out loud funny spots. He is a highly strung uptight CEO, and she's this sort of carefree fluffy girl, and she's like, I'm going to do things that you are not used to doing, because you need to snap out of your funk, sort of thing. And she takes him camping, and that is highly hilarious. And there's some misunderstandings along the way, but there's a bit of butting heads and angst and things like that as well. There were probably bits of the book where I was like, oh, for goodness sake, type stuff, but overall it's their love story. It's how they get back to Jim and whatever her name was, that met on the first night, instead of Jameson, the sort of the stuffy CEO sort of thing. As I say, I enjoyed it enough that I bought and downloaded book 2, which is called The Takeover. I should say that Miles is the eldest of 4 brothers, so book 2 is the next brother. And that is Elliot's story, and it's Elliot and Claire is the female in the stopover. No, gosh, The Takeover is Elliot and Claire. This book could have been my top book of the year. The love story between Elliot and Claire is just lovely. You got shades of him in book 1 where he was introduced. He's got a great sense of humour, a great personality. He has the nasty role of buying companies that are going bankrupt and stripping them and fixing them and selling them at a profit and all of that stuff. So he's not liked, but he's a really likable guy. Claire runs the company her late husband set up, and it is struggling, and am I calling him Elliot? Have I just gone through this last few minutes calling him Elliot? It is Tristan. I can't believe I did that. I'm pretty sure I did that. There will probably be a blurb on the screen by now already. Gosh, I'm getting my brothers mixed up. This would do it when you're trying to wing it, basically. Okay, Tristan and Claire. I've lost my train of thought completely. So anyway, they meet because he is trying to buy her struggling business and she won't sell it. And so then they have a bit of interaction at the start of the book, and then they sort of separate for a bit. And her assistant suggests she goes to this conferencey type thing in France, how to improve your business and new age ideas and all of this, and she decides that it can't hurt to go, so she goes. And of course the keynote speaker for this conference is Tristan Miles. So there is a very funny thing, right literally at the first time she realizes he is there, is he has been called onto stage. She's in the audience and she's like, oh my, it's the last person on earth, because at the moment she doesn't like him. He's trying to take over her business, her late husband's business. So she gets up to leave and he goes, I can't remember her last name, but he goes, Claire, whatever, sit down. So that was quite funny. So she sort of has to slink back in. Oh, going a dead leg. So they spend time together in this conference, and then he's going to Paris for business, and he asks her to come for the weekend, and she ums and ahs. I think, have they actually done anything by this point? I can't remember. But she goes to Paris, and they have a sexy weekend in Paris. But she doesn't really want to get any further than this because she's got 3 boys, but he's really into her. And just his courting of her, meeting her sons, there's a lot of humour around the meeting of the sons, and just getting her to a point where this will be okay, it will work. I like the boys like me, it's gonna be okay. It's just a lovely love story. It's steamy like book one, and it is steamy, and this is where it doesn't quite make the number one book for me, because I read them I read each book in a day, and I read them back to back. And why it falls down from not being the best book is the sex scenes. To me, I felt like when I was reading Tristan and Claire's sex scenes, I was reading the scenes from book one. The only thing different was the names. It was like the author had just written this big sex scene and cut and pasted bits into the books, because they were almost identical. And I'm sure if you don't read the books back to back, you wouldn't have picked up on it. But I literally finished the book last night and started the new book today. So yesterday's book was fresh in my mind, and so when I got to that, I'm like, So yeah, they're kind of doing exactly the same thing, down to how she responds, how he reacts, whatever. It just was too similar, if not the same, and that's why I'm like, it almost is my best book. I understand why people have book boyfriends now. I would like to find a Tristan Miles, please. Yeah, so I really, that probably is a 6-star read. It should probably be 5, given that I'm complaining about the sex scenes, but if I hadn't read the second book, it would be right up there. So yeah, book 3, which is called The Casanova, is Elliot's story, the third brother, and that is due out August, end of August or end of July, soon, within the next couple of months. So okay, and the last book I'm going to talk about in this video, because I'm the 3 remaining books after that are all to do with the historical romance readathon, which I'm currently doing, so I'll talk about those in the wrap up for that. So the last book that I read in June, before the readathon started, is Because of Miss Bridgerton, Julia Quinn, and this is book 1 in the Rokesbury series. These are being called here, it doesn't actually say it on this one, it might say it on another one, a Bridgerton prequel series or something like that, but yeah, it's the Rokesbury family and the Bridgertons. And I read this because book 2 worked for some prompts in the historical readathon, but I wanted to get book 1 done before I read book 2. So this is a bit of a, it's not a strong hate to love. It centres on George Rokesbury and Billy Bridgerton, and they are neighbours. And this is the generation or so, I think, prior to all of these Bridgertons. That's how I understand it to be. Oh, God, legs going to sleep. So George is the eldest of 5, yeah, and Billy, I'm not sure what the number is in Billy's family. I know she's got a brother, because I think the brother is the father of all of these Bridgertons. That's how I think it is, but I might be completely off base. But anyway, they're neighbours. They live very close to each other in the Kent countryside. Is it the Kent countryside? It's in England. And Billy spends her childhood growing up with George's younger 2 brothers, Edward and Andrew, and they are thick as, the 3 of them, thick as thieves, and they get up to mischief, and she's a real tomboy, and George is very serious, and he's going to be the heir of the dukedom, and you know, he hasn't got time for that malarkey, so he doesn't really pay her much notice, and she's just the silly little girl from next door kind of thing. And as far as she's concerned, he's just the serious brother that doesn't join in all the fun sort of thing. So the book opens with him having to rescue her off the roof of an abandoned building, which is quite funny. There is definitely dislike between them initially, so there's lots of banter. I found this really refreshing because I have been arguing with the Bridgerton books. I think I've read 5 of them so far, and only 2 really have grabbed me. The other 3 I'm like sort of thing. I loved this book. That I found it hilarious. There's definitely laugh out loud quips in this, and I read this just before I made the decision to start writing things down, and I really wish literally there was a line or sentence in this book that I wanted to write down, and I tried to remember the page number and I can't, and I thought in the morning, I was like, I need to start writing stuff down because I'm just not going to remember this. But there were genuinely some brilliant laugh out loud instances in this book, and I just loved it. It's just the thawing between the two, the recognition that actually maybe they're not as bad as you thought they were, sort of thing. You know, he doesn't think she's so bad and she doesn't think he's so bad. And you know, he's like, I always thought you would end up with one of my brothers, and she's like, no, they're my mates. It just was a really nice story, and I'm pleased that I made the decision to read it. Yes, recommend. Okay, that schmozzle was what I'll tell you about in this video. 5, and there are 3 more in June which are in the historical romance readathon, and I'll do that all as one wrap up. Okay, well, I think hopefully that was okay and you made sense of it. When I watch it back to edit the video and add all the pictures in, I'll find out just how diabolical it was, and I may record again. We'll see. Hopefully it should get better from here on in, because I will actually have my written words to go back and look at before I try and remember these books. Yeah, okay, well that's all, and I will catch you again in another video very soon. Thanks everyone, bye for now.